The Secrets of Doctor Who is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, where we discuss everything about the hit BBC series Doctor Who. And today we're discussing the 12th Doctor story, Hell-Bent. I'm Dom Bettinelli, and joining me today on the panel are Jimmy Akin. Hey, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
And Father Cory Sticha. Hey, Father Cory.
How's it going?
Folks, be sure to follow The Secrets of Doctor Who in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, your favorite podcast app, or watch us on the StarQuest YouTube channel at youtube.com/StarQuestMedia, where you should make sure to subscribe and hit the bell to make sure you get notifications of the things that you've subscribed to. And I want to tell you about another show on the StarQuest Network you are sure to enjoy called The Secrets of Star Wars. If you like Secrets of Doctor Who, you'll like that. So you can find that wherever fine podcasts are found or at sqpn.com/Star Wars. And finally, as a preamble, make sure to stick around to the end of the show because we have more of your fabulous listener feedback that we're going to share and discuss. All right, so let's talk about Hell-Bent. This is sort of the penultimate 12th Doctor story. Is it penultimate?
No, it's no.
That's right.
There's a whole other season after this.
Yeah,
that's right. That's right. This is the. I'm making reference to the fact that there is a Christmas special that followed after this, and then the season with Bill would come following that. But this is the last Clara episode. Jimmy, can you give us a recap of what happens in this one?
This week, the 12th Doctor stumbles into a diner outside of the fictional town of Jackson, Nevada. There, he meets Clara Oswald, who's working behind the counter, but he doesn't seem to remember her, and he tells the story of what's led up to this point in a flashback. After the Doctor emerged from his confession dial on Gallifrey, he staged a passive coup against Rassilon, and he was such a hero in the Time War that the other Time Lords sided with him against Rassilon, who the Doctor then banished from Gallifrey. Afterwards, the Time Lords pressed him to reveal what he knows about the hybrid, but the Doctor said he needed to use a time extractor to get Clara from the moment just before she died because she has information on the hybrid. They then extract Clara, and it turns out that this was all an elaborate plan on the Doctor's part that he spent 4.5 billion years executing. Neither he nor Clara really knows who the hybrid is. The Doctor faked that to get leverage in order to save Clara. But he wants to protect her now by wiping her memory of him so that nobody can find her. And he plans to do this with a neural block rather than telepathy this time, since it will be painless. Clara and the Doctor steal a TARDIS and travel to the end of time, where they meet Ashildr in the ruins of Gallifrey. The Doctor and Ashildr toss out theories about what the hybrid might be, but nothing is definitive. While they're doing that, Clara fiddles with the neural block because she doesn't want to forget. The Doctor says that one of them needs to forget because they can't keep going on like they have been. Together, they activate the block, and instead of blanking Clara's memory of the Doctor, it blanks the Doctor's memory of Clara. Back in the present, where the Doctor has stumbled into the diner and told Clara his story, Clara steps into the back room of the diner, and it's revealed that the diner is itself the stolen TARDIS, and Ashildr is inside. Clara decides to go to Gallifrey so that the Time Lords can put her back in her time stream as she's about to face the Raven, since that's a fixed point. But since she and Ashildr are both immortals, they'll take the long way round and have lots of adventures on their way there. They dematerialize the diner, and the Doctor sees that they have found his TARDIS for him, and it's sitting right behind where the diner was. So he gets in the TARDIS and takes off. The end.
All right. Overall impressions of this one, Father Cory?
This is one of those it's such a mixed bag. There's much of it I really like. There's some themes they cover that are really good. The whole hybrid thing just seems like a letdown. It's just kind of like, well, we don't really know. It was just whatever. The whole, of course, you got to have Stephen Moffat's. We're at the end of time. The Time Lords would never look at the end of time to find me. Everything else is gone. It's just he can't just do like I'm hiding somewhere. Oh no, I got to go hide at the most remote place possible. And it's the whole, and then of course Clara and Ishildur going off and having adventures in a stolen TARDIS, which looks really cool because of course it's a recreation of the first Doctor's TARDIS, but still
on the inside.
Yep. But it's still just it's a letdown of an ending in my opinion. And it just it bounces around between really cool stuff and really just odd, strange decisions. So,
how about you, Jimmy?
Well, this one is widely hated by many in the Doctor Who community, but in contrast to Heaven Sent, which is widely liked, but I don't super love the former, and I don't super hate this one. I think they're both okay. They both have stupid stuff in them. You know, the 14 times harder than diamond, let's punch at this thing for billions of years. I don't like that. They should have toned that down. And in the same way, in this, they establish it. He spent 4.5 billion years punching the wall, and I didn't like that last episode. I don't like it now. I also think the hybrid is completely lame, the way they pay it off. We need a definitive answer, and this, we'll just toss out some theories ending is no good. Having said that, everything else in the episode I like. I don't really mind that they pull Clara back from the brink of death. I think this is a creative way to do that. Stephen Moffat kind of has gotten some flack for not leaving characters dead, and that's true when that becomes a pattern. Although actually it's interesting, in the very first episode where this kind of comes up is Silence in the Library and Forest of the Dead, where River Song dies. And the Doctor, the 10th Doctor at that point, but Stephen Moffat's writing makes a big point of, you know, death gives us shape. It provides closure to things. And so the 10th Doctor is a fan of biographies, even though, as Donna Noble points out, they have a death at the end of every one of them. and you know, he found a way of kind of sort of saving River in that, and that was okay. That was a good ending. And this, in the same way, I think he kind of sort of found a way of saving Clara, and I don't mind him exploring that. If you set it in a broader context of nobody ever really dies, well, then that's a problem. But the individual elements of it, like River's salvation and Clara's salvation, if they're creatively done, which I think those two are, I don't really mind it. But then I'm also a comic book fan, so, you know, I'm used to people dying and coming back all the time.
Right. I've often said that I don't like how Moffat brings people back, never lets anyone die. I agree. This was a creative way to bring her back. My problem is it strips her death of emotional impact, and I think that bothers me from a character standpoint. Just like I want, you know, Clara has been the companion for a long time, and I want her to get a good send off. And if you're gonna kill her off, and you're gonna whack the viewer, the fan, you know, in the heart with her death, and then to undo that 2 episodes later, it feels, that one felt a bit of a cheat. However, I agree. This is a good way to bring her back. It's not a, hey, I'm really here. It was all just a fake out. No, they extract her from time. And
that's what they do with the Master.
Yeah. Right. The Master every time. You know, I was thinking, before I get to my thought about the companions in general, in this relation to Clara, but also just in general, this episode, I agree, Jimmy. I'm unlike other fans. I like this one better than Heaven Sent. I think the mood is different. It's better. The Heaven Sent is dark and dreary. Not my favorite mood in a Doctor Who episode. And this one is much more adventure. I mean, he's the grim doctor. He's relentless, but there's still a sort of high adventure mode in this. I feel. I mean, that might not be the best term, but I really like that. I liked this Ishildur is finally one that doesn't annoy the heck out of me when she shows up, because she's billions of years old. She's matured in mellowed in a way, and she's finally not annoying. So I thought that was interesting.
She's actually at this point an equal to the Doctor finally.
Yeah. Yes.
where she can talk to him eye to eye instead of, as kind of a petulant child trying to tell its elders what it knows more.
In fact, she's actually older than the Doctor now because she's lived through those 14.5 billion years, and he just skipped over them.
Right. Exactly.
I don't think. I mean, I'm in regard to the point that you made, Dom, about this cheapening Clara's death. I agree that can happen in some circumstances where you bring somebody back and it cheapens their death, but I don't mind it as long as it's well done, or if it's a beloved character that I want to see have a happy ending. And so to me, I don't feel like I was really invested in, I really want to see Clara die. And I really want this to be high tragedy. In fact, I think her death in Face the Raven is the weakest part of this trilogy. I think Face the Raven is not as good as Heaven Sent or Hell Bent. Her death and what leads up to it, I think, is actually weak. I mean, we were talking earlier about how she even kind of seems to be out of character in that.
Right. Right. That's true. I agree. I would agree with that assessment, that it is the weakest.
Yeah. Now, if someone brought Hamlet back, okay, I would feel that cheapens what happened in Hamlet, but that's a different story.
Or Duncan.
literally a different story.
But go ahead.
Of course, it's funny that Clara becomes literally undead. She doesn't have a heartbeat. She doesn't breathe. She's not going to age. But unlike zombies, she doesn't decay either.
Yeah.
But she is literally undead. She's not alive. She's not dead. She's somewhere in the middle.
Right. I got more to say about that when we get to when we discuss that, because it's some interesting aspects of, is she really, well, we'll get to it.
It's science fairy tale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But one thing I wanted to mention was just the companions of New Who. In the Russell T Davies and the Stephen Moffat era, companions very often come to a bad end. I mean, Rose, she ends up with her mother and father, but she's in an alternate universe. She's kind of cut off from ours.
With her 10th Doctor boy toy.
Yep.
Yeah, I guess that's not a bad end for her. Martha Jones?
It's a bad end. I mean, it's not what she would have chosen.
Right.
If you define badness in those terms, the only one who has a happy ending is Martha, and even that is tinged with sadness.
Yeah,
because she's
a soldier.
Well, she realizes, I need to get out of here because this isn't going to go anywhere for me. So I'm out. See you later.
Right.
I think this is partly because they realized that the producers realized that in the classic era, the companions don't really have good endings, and after traveling the universe, I mean, they don't have believable endings frequently. And after traveling the universe with the Doctor, what would get you to leave? It's going to be something. It's going to be something in some degree unpleasant.
Right.
I guess. Yeah. I mean, so we have Amy and Rory end up getting stuck in the past. Clara dies. But not.
They get stuck in the past, but they live a happy life.
They do, but they're cut off from, like, say, Rory's dad and, their life in this time. But then you have Clara, then you have Bill, who ends up, getting killed and becoming cyberized, and it's just, and then you have the 13th Doctor, where actually the outcomes aren't bad for everybody. They actually, Dan
more or less,
goes back to his life. Yaz, doesn't she go back to her life?
Yeah.
Graham and what's his name? Ryan. Yeah. They have, comparatively decent outcomes.
Admittedly, I wouldn't take quite as broad definition of bad ending as you do. Yes, I would say with Amy and Rory that they actually did have a good ending, even if it was not in their time and not with their family. But they did have a life. They did have a family. They did have, so that was good. Rose, she did kind of become action warrior Rose, but she did, again, she did have her parents together. She did have the 10th Doctor spinoff. So, she had a pretty good ending as well. I
guess. Donna had the whole mind block thing, Dr. Donna thing.
But she got married and won the lottery. Yeah, so, I think a consistent theme in New Who is the companions tend to have they try to give them good endings that are not completely horrible, but they do contain elements that are negative that pry them away from the Doctor.
Yeah. Whereas in classic, the Ian and Barbara go back to their life. Jamie sit back.
Ian and Barbara have a good ending because they go back by their own choice. Susan gets stranded by the Doctor, but it has
Jamie and Zoe.
But Susan's stranding has redeeming elements because they put a positive spin on it, even though the Doctor's stranding her. She's got a boyfriend now and everything, so we know she's going to be okay. I forget how Vicky gets given into the custody of some people. So does Victoria. Jamie and Zoe get their minds blocked.
Yep.
And they forget everything but their first adventure with the Doctor. Sarah Jane.
But they do go home. Yeah.
They do go home. Sarah Jane gets stranded. Leela suddenly falls in love. Romana, too, gets stranded in E-Space. Stays in E-Space to avoid Time Lord Justice.
Right.
Adric gets killed. Nyssa dumps the Doctor to treat plague patients. So he gets dumped for the plague. As Sycorax Rock said in his Total Eclipse of the Celery Heart song, Tegan dumps the Doctor. It's like, I'm sick. I'm out of here. I don't want any more of this. And Ace, we don't know, but it was something bad.
Yeah.
Right.
And Perry, we thought she was dead, but then she ended up actually going and marrying Brian Blessed. I mean,
oh man. I mean, now that was a character death betrayal. Her ending up with the brain of a slug was her true ending.
Yeah.
I think the Time Lords were lying to him about she becomes a warrior queen.
Yeah. And Mel, I don't know about Mel's ending up with what's his
I said, see you later. See you later, Dom. I'm going off with Savalon Glitz.
Not sure about that one. And then there's all the third Doctor companions who mostly end up in decent places. I mean, Liz
gets transferred to another assignment.
Yeah.
I mean,
Joe gets married.
Yep.
Yeah. So those are all pretty good. Well, anyway, so I just thought it was interesting.
Except for Captain Yates.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does he die or does he get transferred to the Amazon?
You haven't seen that one yet. We shouldn't spoil it for him.
Yeah.
Okay. Don't spoil it. No spoilers. All right. So I just wanted to, a little digression on the companion departures. So with this story, you mentioned that it starts in Jackson, Nevada. We're back in Nevada. And did you notice that the sign for Jackson had a saying on it? No matter where you go, there you are. The line from Buckaroo Banzai. I love that addition. It's a really nice little thing.
By the way, if anybody happens to have a Bronco like that, I would take it gladly. Classic, late 80s, early 90s, full-size Bronco. I'd take it.
Those are collector's items.
It'd be a little hard. It'd be a little hard to drive here in America, though, because if you notice carefully, he's driving on the British side.
Is he really?
Yeah, that's a British model.
They must have filmed that in the Canary Islands. They must have filmed in the Canaries, I guess. So he walks into the cafe that is the replica of the one that the 10th Doctor, Amy and Rory
11th.
And River. 11th, sorry. I always mix them up. The 11th Doctor, Amy, Rory, and River went to in the Lake Silencio stories. But it's not that cafe. It is a different one.
I think it's the same exact one.
Same one.
He even says it later. I've been here before, and it was Rory.
But it's Me's TARDIS. It's Schilder's TARDIS.
Right.
Yeah.
With a chameleon circuit.
This is a retcon. It's Clara's TARDIS. But this is a retcon. That the diner that he was in before was Clara's TARDIS. He just didn't know it.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't pick that up. Okay. Now you mentioned he doesn't recognize her, but when I first watched this, the implication was she didn't recognize him, and
it may be written so that they're not recognizing each other, so you can read it either way, so that the ending isn't spoiled.
Right. I think that's the point I was getting at. Is I think we're supposed to, the first time you see it, think that she's not recognizing him, and then in the end, because of the neuroblocker, and in the end that swap.
See,
and then it's sort of a sixth sense. Oh, it was a ghost all along.
See, I seem to call. I mean, of course, this was quite a few years ago that we watched this for the first time, but that she was just playing along from the beginning, and it seemed to me that it was somewhat clear that she was just playing along with the Doctor, basically.
Maybe
that she knew this was a Doctor. She knew who this was, but he didn't recognize her.
Okay. I mean, I guess you could, if you're perceptive enough, you probably pick that up. I wasn't perceptive.
I mean, that's what I perceived, but that doesn't mean that was the case.
I think that on a careful watch, you could pick that up, but I think it's meant to be ambiguous, at least for the first time viewer.
Right. So there's the usual Moffat, very nice sort of like double meaning lines. You've been traveling, she says, from time to time. He replies, which is literally true and figuratively. He offers to play music on his guitar for her in exchange for, a cup of coffee.
Oh, yeah, that was another element I could have done without.
Yeah, and he does end up playing the Clara's theme music, so it made it diegetically part of the, the in-universe story.
And that was clever. I like that.
Well, I liked how he turned his sonic glasses into a Bluetooth receiver.
for the speakers, yes, that would be a very clever thing to be able to do. So then we see Gallifrey, which is now restored. Last time we saw Gallifrey in the 12th Doctor's or 11th Doctor's time, it had been destroyed from the Time War. They've rebuilt things. All the cloister bells are ringing, and we are told about cloister wraiths or sliders. Was this something we knew about in Classic Who, or is this a brand new element? This is new.
This is new. It has the cloisters have been introduced in spin-off media, and then the show eventually picked them up.
Okay.
But the cloister wraiths are not in Classic Who, and they have mentioned them earlier this season, though. They also mentioned in The Magician's Apprentice and The Witch's Familiar that there were events apparently before the Time War known as the Cloister Wars that the Doctor and Missy participated in.
Okay. And what are cloister wraiths? Are they like machines inhabited by the spirits of dead Time Lords?
It's not entirely clear, but they're manifestations of the Matrix that are in some way patterned after people who have been uploaded into the Matrix, and they protect the Matrix and they speak on behalf of the Matrix. And so even though this is all technological, and the Doctor tries to explain it to Clara, and then she says, "Was I meant to understand any word of that?" he tries again and makes it simpler, and he says the Time Lords have a big computer made of ghosts in a crypt guarded by more ghosts, and the cloister wraiths are the ghosts who are doing the guarding.
Okay. And I think, you know what? That's a good explanation. That's good enough.
So could this be the ghosts of the guards?
The ghosts of the
Time Lord guards?
Could be. So we get to see Rassilon again, and he's regenerated since he was Timothy Dalton. And we see...
I like the Timothy Dalton version better.
Well, Timothy Dalton. I'll take James Bond any day. And the Sisterhood of Karn show up. I think just to kind of needle the Time Lords, apparently. That's mostly what she does, is kind of make wry observations.
Yeah, I like seeing Ohila in this. She was, as the story progresses, she's a little more negative than I would have expected. She has a little bit of antagonism towards the Doctor in this that is something she hasn't shown before. I like her as a character, but Stephen Moffat wrote her more negatively as the story progressed.
Well, again, they came through time the long way, so
that's right. So then we get the old barn again, which we've seen earlier in the season when we had that story about Clara grabbing the young Doctor's leg from under the bed. But then we saw before in the Day of the Doctor where this was where the moment device was going to be set off, and then wasn't.
And this barn, is apparently owned by the Doctor's family. Because the Doctor was sleeping in it as a little boy, and in this, there's a caretaker woman. We don't know who she is or what she is to the doctor. She may be a household servant. She may be his mom. We don't know. But when she comes out to the barn and sees the 12th Doctor, but doesn't recognize him immediately and says, "You're not supposed to be in here. This is for the boys." And it's another hint that the Doctor and the Master are secret brothers. But he then turns and she sees him and recognizes, oh, this is one of the boys. This is the Doctor.
Yeah.
I wonder, though, if the implications, maybe the Doctor and the Master are orphans, and this was a home that, orphan boys lived in, which would connect with the Timeless Child story.
It could, but but that would be inconsistent with other things they've established, because the Doctor, both in spin-off media, but including on screen, because the 13th Doctor at one point is describing her family, and the second Doctor early on, Victoria asks him, "Do you remember your family?" And he says, "Oh yes, I remember them all the time, and when I don't, they're asleep in my mind." So he's got a family. And the 13th Doctor describes members of it, including she's apparently got multiple grandmothers, more than the usual two, and describes one of them as being rather eccentric.
Okay.
Well, and then there was a book that was written during the between times called Lung Barrel that talks about the Doctor's family. And it's very much, an aristocratic, one of the great families of Gallifrey and things like that. And the house itself is alive, and, so I don't know how much that's changed with everything that's come out with New Who, but that's kind of considered to be the semi-canon explanation of where the Doctor comes from, was that story.
The Time Lords apparently have a way of recognizing each other through regenerations, because she recognized him, even though she probably hasn't seen him since this face.
Presumably telepathy. And we've seen the Doctor recognize other Time Lords through regenerations as well.
So the poor people, the people of the dry lands, all seem to view the Doctor as a hero. They come around him, and the Doctor himself, like everyone seems to be, all the people in authority are very afraid of the Doctor. And we have this successive number of visits. We have like a ship sent to gather him, and he just silently draws a line in the sand, like with the implication, don't cross this line. And so when this ship with a gigantic gun doesn't work, the head of the armed forces, the general, shows up. Then that doesn't work, so the High Council shows up, and he just turns and walks away from them until finally Rassilon knows that it's not going to happen. He has to go to the Doctor, and so Rassilon shows up there.
I love the caretaker in all this, because she just walks in and points and just can't say a word, and the Doctor's like, he knows.
The president is outside. And then when Rassilon shows up, he's got a bunch of soldiers there and basically tells them to shoot the Doctor, and they refuse.
I like the line that Rassilon, he's trying to assert his dominance, and he says, "You know what you've given me by bringing me out here," and the Doctor says, "What?" And Rassilon says, "No witnesses." And so that's a death threat. "I can kill you out here with no witnesses." And the Doctor says something to the effect of, "I have the same."
Yeah, me too. And then, so the soldiers shoot, like when they shoot at him, they all miss on purpose. And then they basically lay down their guns and go stand next to, like, willing to die with the Doctor, because he's the hero of because he's the hero of the Time War. And then finally, when all of the other ships show up and point their guns at Rassilon, the jig is up. He's done. And this is Rassilon, as he points out, the Redeemer, the resurrected, the founder of Time Lord society. And yet the Doctor kind of faces him down and in the end exiles him, which is interesting.
In hindsight, there's also an interesting line that Rassilon has, where Rassilon, as he's threatening the Doctor's life, he says, "How many regenerations did we give you? Because I've got all day." And okay, that would make sense given the Doctor's knowledge of believing that they've just given him a new cycle of regenerations after Matt Smith.
Mhm.
But in light of the timeless child, that's a hollow threat.
Right.
Yeah, he just keep I could do this all day, to quote Captain America. So he exiles Rassilon, exiles the High Council, and the doctors, I think he's talking to the general and the what's her name?
Ohila.
Yeah, he talks about what they did to him with the confession dial, and it's sort of a perversion of what it is. He says a confession dial is a ritual act of purification. It allows a dying Time Lord to face his demons and make his peace before his mind is uploaded to the Matrix. It was never intended as a torture chamber for the living. In other words, they put him in it as a living person in order to torture him until he reveals what he knows about the hybrid.
I'm glad they gave us that line, because that was a question I actually raised about how is this supposed to connect with people being uploaded to the Matrix, and I'm glad they clarified that.
Yep.
Yeah, and the doctor stubbornly refused to just say the thing that he needed to say at the end to get out of the confession dial, because he was so angry about the fact that they killed Clara in their attempt to capture him. And that's sort of been his motivator for 4.5 billion years.
Yeah, only it's not. Clara's death is really on Clara. She was the one who was reckless. They did not deliberately kill her. They did not deliberately put her in a situation. She was the one who took the number from Rigsy. And she interfered with the quantum shade and the deal that it had, so that a shielder couldn't get her out of it. So nobody but Clara was really responsible for Clara's death.
Yeah, that's true.
Although I do have an issue with this for whatever billion years, only because the Doctor did not experience it 4 billion years.
Yeah,
he only experienced it that last loop.
Mm-hmm.
The Doctor that's standing there only experienced that last loop.
True.
But they keep making it like, oh, it completely changed him and it changed his eyes. No, it didn't. No. It really didn't.
It's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah. So the myth is that the hybrid is a crossbred between Daleks and Time Lords. This is something we saw when Davros in the beginning of the season had captured the Doctor, and that it will stand in the ruins of Gallifrey. And like you said, Jimmy, we never get closure on the hybrid. Like this is a big thing, and maybe Moffat wanted to leave it out there as one of these, the Omega stuff and the stuff from the classic Who as Doctor mythology that just lays out there until some future showrunner picks it up. Maybe, but it just feels unsatisfying to drag us through the hybrid all season long and give us nothing at the end.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Well, they even winked at the 8th Doctor movie where the hybrid is human and half human, half Time Lord, and made it sound like it was the Doctor. And it's like, right. And I'd forgotten about that part. And it's like, oh, they are not going there, are they? And of course, then they immediately, but that's not it at all.
Well, They don't eliminate it. They propose 4 theories of what the hybrid could be. The first is a hybrid between Time Lord and Dalek. The second is a Shielder, who is a hybrid between human and Meyer. As she said, I've got a little bit of Meyer in me. The third is the Doctor himself, who would be a Time Lord human hybrid. And the fourth, which is Stephen Moffat's preferred solution, is it's the Doctor and Clara, which I think is the weakest, because 2 people is not a hybrid.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But this was weak.
So, as you mentioned, Clara gets extracted from time. The Doctor has done this under false pretenses, and ends up shooting the general and causing. I like the scene because he's got the weapon pointed at the general. It says 10th.
No, he says regeneration, and the general says 10th.
Right. And then he's like, okay, so you get more, and shoots him and causes him to regenerate into his apparently 11th regeneration. A woman. First time we've seen a Time Lord regenerate into a woman on screen. Of course, Missy was the master who became a woman. So
and there was a line too where the general said, "Finally back in my normal body," or something like that, where basically she was always a woman and had regenerated into a man.
Right. So they escape to the cloisters, and he says,
I do like as the doctor is in that scene, because that's where they're in a medical bay, and that's when he says, I need a neural block, human compatible. So that's when he picks up the neural block. But he also he's got a gun, and he's in this very tense situation, and he says, everyone stay exactly where you are. On pain of death, nobody take a selfie.
Yeah.
Right. Classic Moffat. So they
also Clara is talking to him afterwards about, you killed that man, and he says, no. On Gallifrey, death is basically Time Lord for man flu.
Yeah.
Yes. I think I think last time we talked about we know where Heaven Sent comes from. Well, what is Hellbent come from? I think actually Hellbent is this reference to the cloisters, because here's the Doctor refers to the cloisters as the hell of the Time Lords, the greatest danger in Gallifrey. So he's bent on getting into the hell of the cloisters, so to escape through it.
Maybe I just took it as the Doctor is hell-bent in terms of very determined and angry.
Yeah, it's Moffat trying to make sure that he can.
Well, what's the saying? Hellbent for leather. You know, determined, charging in. Yeah,
it really ticked off. So in the cloisters, we see a Dalek begging to be exterminated. Weeping angels.
That's a nice transition, because the Doctor is like, exterminate me.
Yeah.
Right.
Put me out of my misery.
And we also see weeping angels and Cybermen, and basically anything, even the most powerful creatures like weeping angels. Anytime they've tried to get into the cloisters, into the Matrix can defend itself, which is remarkable.
Except against the Master, who's been in and out of it multiple times covertly.
Yep.
And the Doctor, in this case too. So this is when the Doctor apparently as a young man had escaped, had gotten into the cloisters and escaped out at a point, and so he's trying to recreate this escape. And while he's doing this, she realizes the Doctor spent this 4.5 billion years in the confession dial, and she says, I have things to say to you, but we don't get to hear them.
I know, it's a bit of a cheat. Because she says, people like us, we should say things to one another, and I'm going to say them now. And then we pan up and we don't get to hear them. And Clara's theme music plays, which is going to loop back later in the episode, because the song the Doctor's playing on his guitar in the diner is called Clara, and it's actually a simplified version of the Clara theme from the show. So I like all that, but this cutaway where I'm going to tell you important personal stuff, and then we don't get to hear it, and I'm like, that's a cheat. But they partially redeem it, because because after she said whatever it is to the Doctor, she turns back to the General and Ohila, and they want to know what she told the Doctor, because they think it was about the hybrid or something. And she says, that's between him and me. I'm not going to tell you about that, except I will tell you one thing that I did say. Don't worry, Doctor, they'll be looking at me. And she reveals they were actually planning their escape in what she said. And so the fact she turned around and started talking to them gave the Doctor a chance to slip down through a hatch and go steal a TARDIS, which he then materializes around her. And so it was part of what they were doing was a getaway plan.
Yep.
Right.
It's like, okay, I can forgive you for not letting me hear the stuff to an extent.
Yep.
There's like, I think, a diegetic reason. I've used that word twice in this episode for the not hearing what she says to him, because this is all him telling Clara in the diner the story, and because his memory of her has been removed, there are certain things he doesn't remember, including, and in fact, I think he comes out and says what she told him.
And she indicates later that what she told him would become not just a story, but a song. And so there is actually, you're right, there is a diegetic reason that I think Stephen Moffat put here, or explanation for why he doesn't remember exactly what she said. He doesn't actually remember her. Later he says he can deduce certain things about Clara based on the whole
Right.
that she left in his memory. So he can tell certain things about the general shape. He doesn't remember details like what she looked like or what she said talked like or anything, but he can deduce certain things like I was in the cloister with her and she told me stuff. And subconsciously, he's processing what he told her as the song he plays.
Well, and that goes back to Matt Smith when he erased erased himself from the database, and they eventually recreated their knowledge of him based on the holes that he left.
Right, the holes he left in history. Yes, yeah. So he steals a new TARDIS, which looks like that plain column. And
I love the design of the original TARDIS compared to any of the modern ones.
Yeah.
It is. When Dr. Ruth had it too, I'm like,
awesome.
Yes, let's do this with Shooty.
And they did such a great job for this, recreating the original TARDIS console room. I mean, it was what the original TARDIS console room likely would have looked like if it had been created today instead of 1960. They did such a good job with that. I mean, I love the Fugitive Doctor's console room too, although that's a more modernized version of it, but it's still, I love that console room was just perfect. And they reused the console from the An Adventure in Time and Space, because they recreated the first Doctor console, and so they reused that.
Have we seen what the TARDIS looks like for the 14th Doctor in any of the preview stuff?
Not really. It's actually been in the comic books, but I don't know if that's going to be canonical.
And I thought I'd seen something where it's basically they're just reusing the set.
The 13th Doctor set. Yeah. Well, that's too bad. So
that's of all the new Who designs, or of all the Doctor Who designs, that's the worst.
The New Agey Crystal.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So the Doctor thinks, getting Clara away from Gallifrey will restart her pulse and put her back in time, even though it will fracture time. Time will heal itself. He kind of dismisses that. But he expects that her pulse is going to restart and she's been saved from the death of the Raven.
I like that he's wrong, that he's making this up as he goes and he's just wrong.
Yes. And as you said, he goes to the very end of the universe, which we've been to a couple of times now. Except there's this.
This is okay. So I know this is science fairy tale, and I can't really hold it to real world standards. But current best understanding of the end of the universe is heat death. Heat death does not lead to a cessation of everything in 5 minutes, which is what they imply. That the universe is only going to last for another 5 minutes. It's like, no. That's not how heat death works. Heat death goes on forever. It's just the point where the universe reaches thermal equilibrium. And so you don't have any large scale movements of energy after that. So the stars are all burned out. It's all dark and cold, and everything is in thermal equilibrium, and it goes on forever. And that's what heat death is. Heat death also is not just a few billion years away. It's trillions of years away, because the big stars like our sun, that's going to last for like 10 billion years. But really small stars or ones that become like neutron stars, these things can go on for trillions of years.
Wow.
And so it's a very long future before we even get to heat death. On the other hand, I like a line that the German physicist Sabine Hassenfelder wrote in her recent book, Existential Physics, where I forget the exact parallel she used, but it's kind of like trying to predict exactly how the universe is going to end on these timescales involves us knowing very, very, very precisely what the laws of nature are. And if our knowledge is even a little bit off over trillions of years, that can add up to big changes. So I don't think it was this, but it was something like this. Our chance of predicting how the universe is going to end is actually kind of like a gnat trying to predict the course of a hurricane.
Right. Exactly. I passed over a line that I kind of liked, which was when Ohila and the Doctor were in the cloisters. She tells him, "You've gone too far. You've given her hope." And he says, "Since when is hope a bad thing?" And she says, hope is a terrible thing on the scaffold, which is an interesting thought.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought, but it's wrong.
Yes, I was going to agree because, on the crucifix, there's lots of hope.
Yeah. Whether it's hope for being rescued in this life or whether it's hope for the next life, hope seems to always be a good thing.
Yep.
Yes, hope is always good, and that it shows an essentially materialistic mindset, isn't it? This idea that she's going to die, so therefore there's no hope. There's always hope. As long as there's, I was going to say, as long as you draw a breath, but she's not drawing breath. But as long as there's life, there's hope. As
the third doctor says, where there's life, there's.
Right. So the doctor says we've gone to the end of the universe I don't have to answer to anyone. And then there's a knock on the door, which I thought was another nice doctor comeuppance. And it's me, not literally me, but a Schilder.
And we have another nice play on words there, even though I hate the me thing. Clara says, who could possibly be out there? And the doctor says, me. And again, it's Clara may interpret that to mean the doctor may be out there, which he actually could be because time traveler, he could have come another way.
Right. Exactly. So, we've talked about the discussion with a Schilder and the hybrid. Clara, meanwhile, refuses to give up her memories of the doctor. She says, these are the best years of my life. You can't take them away from me.
I like that they did this because, the 10th Doctor had blanked Donna Noble's memories, and the 12th Doctor here points that out. He doesn't mention her by name, but he's talking to me about how he's going to blank Clara's memories. And I had already written in my note, why can't the Doctor blank Clara's memory like he did Donna's? Meaning just telepathically. Yep. And they give us an explanation for that. That the doctor says, I'm going to blank her memories. I've done it before, but I'm going to use a neural block this time because it'll be painless. And because Clara is secretly watching on the TARDIS screen what's going on in this conversation, she figures out that's what he wants the neural block for, and she starts to jigger with it. So this is like what happened with Donna Noble. Neither one of them wanted to lose their memories, only this time Donna, in the form of Clara, gets to fight back.
Right. And she reverses the polarity, she says, on the neural block, which is a nice callback. And she tells him, like she says, I've messed with it, and now there's a 50-50 chance whether it will work on me or work on you. We don't know. And they decide to both press the button. Doctor flips a coin. One of them has to lose the memories of the other.
Not literally, but figuratively, they flip a coin.
Yep. Right. And they press it together, and he has a bunch of advice for her as he's going.
It's like a death scene, only it's not a death. Yeah. He's just about to forget, and he's giving her all this advice, including don't eat pears; they're too squishy.
They make a mess of your chin. That's very important. Write that down. I did like that. That was good. And so. The doctors.
Do you know where that comes from?
I know he's. Yeah.
The bit about pears. It's actually from Blink, because in Blink, David Tennant had to record a bunch of stuff for his little appearances on DVDs, and he was just ad-libbing and made up this stuff about don't eat pears. And it never got showed on screen, but it became an in-joke with the cast, and it eventually got out to the fandom.
Yeah.
And made pear breeders mad.
Well, it did show on screen, but it was the part that was fast forwarded. He had to sit there and talk, because they're fast forwarding, and so that's one of the things he said.
Yeah,
funny. It's like George Bush and broccoli. So the TARDIS that's disguised as a diner is where he and Clara are, and they take off and leave him there. And we'll talk about Clara in Schilder's conversation, but the doctor's TARDIS has been brought from London to Nevada by Schilder and Clara, and it's been decorated, drawn on by flowers, as well as a drawing of Clara. And it's interesting because the doctor had told Clara, "I will recognize her when I see her," and clearly he's looking straight in her face, and he didn't recognize her. But did he wonder why there was a drawing of the waitress on the front of his TARDIS? He didn't say anything.
And we'd seen the decorated TARDIS at the end of Face the Raven, because it was done as it was painted up as like a memorial for Clara, because that's
right.
where she died.
Right. And the Doctor's TARDIS had been left behind. And so he gets his purple velvety coat back, so that, because Clara had earlier said, "Where's your coat? I like that one. It makes you doctory." And because he had sort of set aside being the Doctor and become this avenging angel figure, and symbolized by him not wearing his coat. So he puts the coat on. He sees the chalkboard, says, "Run, you clever boy."
And
Clara's signature line. And be a doctor. Yep. And then the TARDIS flips him a proper sonic screwdriver out of the console, finally. I've
always liked that one, the gold with the blue lights.
Yes.
I thought that one always looked sharp.
I like that one. And then Clara and Ashildr Clara says, "We're going back to Gallifrey so I can face the Raven. But we're going to go the long way." And it's like, in a way, this is just like we all, as in fact Clara says, we all face the Raven eventually. We all die. So how is this any different? She just knows the place, but and she gets to choose the time, apparently.
So subjectively,
they can travel forever.
She knows the place and the time, but she gets to choose how long it takes her to get there.
Right, exactly. So she gets to choose when. So she could travel forever and then eventually go back, because Ashildr is alone at the end of time, so she's not there.
This is later in Ashildr's timeline, though, than that.
Yeah. Right. But if Clara never went back, she would have been there at the end of time. So apparently, at some point, she went back.
No, it doesn't follow. Ashildr initially lived on Earth all the way through the next 4.5 billion years until she ends up on Gallifrey at the end of time. Then she gets in the TARDIS with Clara, and they go back.
I don't mean Ashildr. I mean Clara. Like Clara and Ashildr are in Nevada in 2020 or whatever it was, 2015, I think it was. And
Clara is not at the end of time, therefore she went back at some point.
Right.
Yes. That's the point I was trying to make. Yep. Thanks. All right. So she goes back the long way round, which is a quote from what the Doctor had said earlier. Any final thoughts on this one, Father Cory?
Every time I heard him talk about taking the long way around, all I could think was "Take the long way home" from Supertramp. Yes,
I was thinking that too. Anything else?
Nope.
Jimmy, anything else?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. I just have a final thought, which is that I know Clara is a controversial companion. Some people really like her. Some people really hate her. I always really like Clara. I liked Jenna Coleman as an actress, and I was sad to see her go. She's one of my favorites. So,
I when we did the ranking companions, I was pretty clear. I am not in the Clara fan club.
I know, and it's fine. Everyone can have their favorites.
I'm sort of in the middle. I like Amy and Rory better than Clara, but absolutely. I don't dislike Clara. I understand why some people find her annoying, but on balance, I still like her.
Yeah. All right, so we do have some feedback, and it's interestingly enough, this feedback is from our discussion of Face the Raven. This comes from our YouTube channel, from the Cloister Bell: A Journey Through Time and Space. That's the account that posted it. And he says, "Excellent show as always, gentlemen. Nicely discussed. I liked the description of Clara's behavior in this as being like near the end of a horror film when everyone is acting way over the top. She really did come across as extra cocky in this, so much so that it seemed out of character for her. As for Ashildr, when it comes to her, they forgot that less really can be more. I'm very much looking forward to what the upcoming specials have in store for us. The Toymaker should be fun. You should read you're right. Michael Goff, who played the Celestial Toymaker, also played Consular Headland in the Fifth Doctor story, Arc of Infinity. Cheers, guys. Signed, Stutz." Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.
And by the way, with your sign and name, you good performance in this episode. Cloister Bell.
Cloister Bells. Very good job. All right. Thank you for that feedback.
Incidentally, the first of the three specials has a known villain as well, who's from the comic books, Beep the Meep. And Beep the Meep proved very popular in the comics, and so that's why they brought him to the big screen now. So that should be interesting as well. The one we don't really know anything about is the middle special, Wild Blue Yonder. They've kept that one tightly under wraps, so it may have some big surprises in it. And David Tennant reportedly, I saw a thing where David Tennant said it's unlike any other episode of Doctor Who.
Interesting. I've seen one publicity still from it where David Tennant is weightless, floating around in a presumably in space, Wild Blue Yonder. So we'll have to see. Excellent. All right. Well, right now we want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create The Secrets of Doctor Who, including Jason T, TJW, Zachariah R, Teresa S, and Edward H. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue The Secrets of Doctor Who and all the shows at StarQuest, and you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. We'd also like to thank Zyman Yannick, who edited this episode. So that's it from us. What did you think of the 12th Doctor story, Hellbent? You can let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com or the Secrets of Doctor Who Facebook page, or send an email to drwho@sqpn.com, or visit the StarQuest Discord community at sqpn.com/discord. You can watch The Secrets of Doctor Who on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/StarQuestMedia. We'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the first of the 60th anniversary specials, The Star Beast. Until then, Father Cory Sticha, thank you for joining me and sharing The Secrets of Doctor Who.
Thank you, Dom.
Jimmy Akin, thank you as well.
Thanks, Dom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who on StarQuest. And remember, never be cruel and never be cowardly. And if you ever are, always make amends.